and welcome to the first Mary Frances Early College of Education Educator Prep Workshop of the spring semester. My name is Sophia,
And my name is Anna.
and we are student ambassadors for the college. Student ambassadors serve as official hosts of the college. We are here to support you and your needs. And as ambassadors, we plan events and initiatives that cater to the student groups along the lines of professional development, recruitment, engagement, DEI, and community service. If you want to get involved, the undergraduate ambassador application opens every January. Please reach out to either one of us if you have any questions about the program or if there's anything you would like to see from your ambassadors.
The Mary Frances College, the Mary Frances Early College of Education is proud to welcome today's guest speaker, our very own Heather Boyle. Heather Boyle is a member of the Department of Communication Sciences and Special Education. She earned her master's in education from Texas Tech University with an emphasis in deaf, hard of hearing, and assistive technology. She has worked in special education for 14 years, serving students with a variety of low incidence disabilities, including orthopedic impairments, visual impairments, and most recently, hearing loss. She joined the Georgia Sensory Assistance Project in 2021 after working for 5 years as an itinerant TVI in the Fannin County school system. She now serves as an education specialist supporting school teams and families in implementing best practice instructional strategies for students with dual sensory loss.
Thank you. That was a nice introduction. I'm excited to be here this afternoon to talk with you guys about assistive technology, something that I'm really passionate about and enjoy in my field and in the past as an itinerant teacher. Just really quickly, I want to explain what Georgia Sensory Assistance Project is just a little bit more so you'll know what that is in the future as you move into your education careers. We are the Deafblind Project for Georgia. Every state has a deafblind project, and we do provide that technical assistance that the ladies mentioned. So keep that in the back of your mind as a resource when you're in the classroom. So we can come out and help with instructional strategies for any students that you have that might have dual sensory loss. So now just to get started, in true I was a middle school teacher at one point. So in true middle school fashion, we're going to look at the W questions and the H questions about assistive technology. What, why, who, where, and how. So first of all, let's see. Oh, so we were jinxed because now I can't skip slides. Let me share screen again. We had a conversation beforehand about how wonderful the technology was working. I think I know what I need to do here. Share. And now, there we go. I think it will work now. Okay. So to get started, first, why do we have to consider assistive technology? We're required to consider that is, one big reason. Every LEA, every school district has to consider assistive technology and assistive technology services for any student with a disability and with an IEP. And that could fall under related services or supplementary aids and services within their IEP. And also that has to be considered, how is this assistive technology going to be used? What are our goals with that? And is that something that's needed at home? So recently, there were some updates to that, and I just wanted to bring that out real quick. In January, OSEP, the Office of Special Education's Programs, released some new guidance around assistive technology. So you'll see that sprinkled throughout this presentation, just a little bit of extra information about that. And I'll try to point out these new factors when we come across them. But we are required to consider that not just in annual IEP meetings, but also in any reviews of IEPs, revisions, eligibility processes. We need to be considering assistive technology for our students. So why? Why is this so important? Well, research has shown that assistive technology works without a doubt. It increases student motivation, it levels the playing field for our students with disabilities, and it just produces better outcomes. Increased post-secondary education enrollment, improved post-secondary academic outcomes, and positive vocational outcomes, and improved independent living skills. So with, this research, we know that it's effective. So we have to really consider this and put forth our best effort to allow for this to happen with our students and support it. So what exactly is assistive technology? Well, under IDEA, it's any item, piece of equipment, or product, whether it's purchased and then modified, or whether it's something that's created that is used for our students with disabilities. And this new updated information that just came out really emphasizes that it's not just for our students in school, it's also for our early intervention group, our little infants and toddlers. So assistive technology also, and these laws also apply to that population. And many tools in the classroom can be considered assistive technology for students with disabilities. And a lot that can be confusing sometimes. And there is a difference between assistive technology and accessible technology. Accessible technology is what our entire classroom is using just to make things easier, to make things more accessible for them as a whole. Assistive technology is specifically outlined in the IEP for students with disabilities. And again, it has that purpose, and there is usually a goal that's wrapped around in that we're using this technology to level the playing field for these students. I think of a good example of this might be closed captioning, and we're using that today. That is a great accessible technology. There's a lot of research around closed captioning that shows that that can be beneficial for hearing students as well as deaf and hard of hearing students. So it's a great accessible technology, but for our students who have hearing impairments, closed captioning is definitely an assistive technology. It's something that is required for them to be successful in the classroom. One thing that assistive technology does not include is surgically implanted devices. So when we think about cochlear implants, those are not included in assistive technology. However, we still support the use of those in school and assist with maintenance, but those are not AT devices. So as we think about AT devices, that's pretty straightforward, and we'll talk about that a little bit more as we move forward. But assistive technology services is not quite as clear, and that's something that's been outlined in these new recommendations from OSTEP. These assistive technology services can include AT evaluations, training on the use of devices, and that can include not only the student, but the teachers and family, locating and purchasing devices, adapting devices and modifying them for use by student, fitting devices, the setup that's involved with these devices that can be quite time consuming, completion of the paperwork involved with the use of devices, software updates, coordinating the use of AT with other service providers. So there's a lot involved with assistive technology services. It's not just about the piece of equipment or the device that the student uses. So we kind of break assistive technology into two different categories. We have high-tech assistive technology, which is, it's pretty self-explanatory, but that's those most complex devices, software, machines. They often serve multiple purposes. Of course, they're usually a little bit more expensive. And some examples include AAC devices, which is augmented alternative communication devices, word prediction software, text to speech devices, refreshable braille displays, screen readers, electric wheelchairs, and FM systems. And this is a picture of a refreshable braille display. So that's just a few examples. And then Read and Write for Google Chrome. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that, but it has speech to text. I think there's a co-writer piece to that also that's got predictive text. It's just a great piece of, well, it's actually a Google Chrome app, but it's also software that students can use in reading and writing. So those are just some examples of high-tech assistive technology. Low and mid-tech assistive technology can include more simple electronic devices and no-tech devices. And then mid-tech devices may be simple one-button communication devices, talking calculators, or even just a simple recorder. And then other devices might be line guides, pencil grips, graph paper, a cane for someone who's visually impaired, non-slip materials, or a rolled towel just for seating. So it really doesn't have to be that complicated. And just because it's low tech doesn't mean it isn't necessary and it isn't appropriate. I mean, sometimes those pieces of technology are actually more beneficial than some of the more high tech pieces of tech. I have just a couple of examples here that I thought I would share with you guys. Like, here's just a simple pencil grip, and you see that in the picture. And oftentimes, OTs, occupational therapists, will kind of make recommendations around things like that. These are calendar boxes for tactile communication systems. And that's another, it's not very high tech, but it's really important for students who are using calendar systems and communication systems. Something just as simple as duct tape can be considered an assistive technology for students that have visual impairments. I went to a workshop last year at UGA where the whole purpose of the workshop was it was about low cost assistive technology and creating your own assistive technology. And it was all based around these signs that we find in our neighborhoods for politicians and election signs. So this particular little workshop was about taking these signs that are thick and plastic and turning them into pieces of assistive technology for students. So that's just a little phone holder. And then we made one that was a little bit larger for iPads. We had made like this is a holds book pages for you for students with orthopedic impairments that have trouble turning pages in books. So those are just a few examples of some low-tech AT. And again, I think we all love fancy electronic gadgets, but sometimes these things are more important for students than those things. So who qualifies for assistive technology devices and services? So we already touched on this. All students with IEPs, regardless of their type of disability. So it really doesn't matter, if it's a learning disability, a visual impairment, or a hearing impairment. All these students qualify for assistive technology, and it should be considered for them regardless of their type of disability. And assistive technology may also be an accommodation for a student with a 504 plan. And it's not, the guidelines for that are not as clear as they are for students with IEPs, but it is very common to see assistive technology included in 504 plans, and those are just as binding as an IEP. So again, it's very important that those accommodations are used. And I just think about going through that list of services that are related to AT, and that seems a little bit overwhelming. And so let's talk about who kind of coordinates those things. Who determines assistive technology needs? Well, to answer that question, it definitely needs to be the entire IEP. So it's not just the classroom teacher, the entire IEP team, sorry. It's not just the classroom teacher. It's not just the assistive technology coordinator. It's everyone on the team, including the family, including the student. So we want to be sure that it's a team decision when we're determining those AT needs. And some districts have assistive technology coordinators, but then there are others who do not. So in those larger districts with AT coordinators, they'll often take a lead in this consideration of AT. Sometimes they perform AT evaluations, and they will usually facilitate locating or purchasing those devices as they're needed. And when those AT coordinators are available, they often help provide that training for the use of AT and coordinate a lot of those AT services. So that takes a lot off the special ed teacher and the classroom teacher when there's an AT coordinator available to help with that process. Um, but again, oftentimes it's the classroom teacher who kind of has to take the lead on some of that paperwork because it goes back and forth from home. I'm just thinking of um, a conversation that I had not long ago with a teacher. There was so much paperwork involved in getting that AT process started that it was just a little daunting for her. So AT coordinators are fabulous when you have them, and the paperwork is worth their involvement in the process. So, but in other instances, there's just not an AT coordinator available. So when that's the case, a lot of times it'll be the special education teacher or the related service provider who may provide training on the AT. Um, for example, I was a vision teacher, itinerant vision teacher for years, and there is a lot of assistive technology involved with students with visual impairments. So oftentimes I was the person who coordinated that and provided training to classroom teachers, the student, and their families when that was necessary. So it's really just case by case as far as who can provide that training. But it's always should be an entire team decision when we're talking about the AT needs of a student. And when assistive technology evaluations are completed on students, that involves collecting information about the needs of the student across settings. So we can't just look at English language arts. We have to look at every class that they go to. We need to consider not only academics, but activities of daily living. Are they accessing what they need to in the lunchroom? What about transportation back and forth from school? So we're looking at their entire day, and oftentimes we're thinking about home and community too. And through those AT evaluations, the consideration of that entire school day, the whole child, then we come to propose some possible AT solutions, devices, and services that could address those needs. Again, an evaluation is not required to assign AT devices and services under IDEA, but it's also a great thing to do if you have someone who's qualified to complete an AT evaluation. And it sometimes things that you don't even think about will come up when those evaluations happen. Um, Typically, any device or AT solution that's suggested is tried out and then evaluated for effectiveness. Some of these devices cost thousands of dollars. So that can be a challenge, and we'll talk about that a little bit more as we move through. But it's always good to propose the solution, trial the solution, and then evaluate it and see how it's working. Because some pieces of AT they may seem like they're going to be a great fit for a student, but it just turns out that there's some barrier there. And then consistent and proper implementation of AT solutions, which is very, very challenging, but it's necessary to truly determine if that intervention is effective and the best intervention that we can use for our students. Um, Again, we talked a little bit about an AT coordinator, but the responsibility of that consistent and appropriate use of AT generally falls on the classroom teacher. I mean, the classroom teachers who is with the student all day long. So they're the one who kind of has to lead that charge to make sure that the AT is being used consistently and properly. So it's really important, I feel like, for classroom teachers to feel comfortable reaching out to the IEP team about the AT, about their students' needs, and to let them know if something's not working for their student. So, where do we get these assistive technology devices? So there are multiple funding sources for AT devices in school districts and early intervention programs. And each state also has an Assistive Technology Act program. Our particular program is called Tools for Life, and it's housed at Georgia Tech. I know we're at UGA, but that is where Tools for Life is. It's at Georgia Tech. So they're a really good resource for school districts. They have a loan library. So some of those expensive pieces of technology that you may feel like the team may feel like they want to try out with a student, they could always reach out to Tools for Life and see if they have that type of device in their loan library. And then the school could actually like borrow that for a short amount of time to do a trial with the device before they have to purchase the device. So that's a really great resource for school districts in the state of Georgia. They also work with assistive technology for adults as well. AIM, Accessible Educational Materials, that is a program that provides print resources. So they might provide large print, braille, electronic materials, electronic books, videos. It's all free and it's provided through Georgia Instructional Materials Center. So that's umbrellaed under DOE, but they also work closely with Tools for Life actually, I think that they work with Georgia Tech on some level to create the Braille materials that they share. Students have to qualify for accessible educational materials, and that could be a visual impairment or a learning disability that prevents access of print. So it's a very great program to learn more about and look into for your students, and it's all free. So that's wonderful. So where should our students be using their assistive technology? We already kind of talked about home, that's an option with AT, but really they need to be using the technology anywhere they need it. So that includes all environments at school, at home, in the community. They need to have access to this AT in all these settings where it's needed. And these are just a few of the things that you often hear in school. They won't use it. It's hard to transport. It might get broken at home. And these are all like they're legitimate concerns. They all happen. But when these kind of obstacles arrive, like we really need to get together with the team again and try to come up with solutions because it's very important that they do have access to assistive technology, our students, where they need that. And, at home, I think that's such an important piece, especially when we're talking about things like communication devices. Um, AT, the academic students need to complete their homework. It's so impactful to have that at home and to get parent buy-in around that too. So we've just got to do everything we can to come up with solutions for some of these challenges that present themselves about AT travels. Because it's, high school students change classes. So it's hard sometimes to move things around, but there's a lot of new technology out there. I mean, I come from a vision standpoint, and years ago we used CCTVs. They're very large, but we've come a long way in technology, and now there's some much more mobile magnification devices. So we just have to work together as a team to try to come up with solutions for these kind of challenges. So I think the big question is, how can you as educators support the use of assistive technology in your classroom? And these are just there's a lot of ways that can be done, but these are just some really um, important things that you can do in the classroom. You really just have to make sure that you understand the purpose and the goal of the assistive technology and how to use it. And it's important for everybody who's working with the student to understand that. What's the purpose of this iPad that my student is carrying from class to class? Is it to check Facebook, or is it to, take pictures of something that's on the board because of some type of executive functioning disability that they may have? So we just all that's another piece of the teamwork part of this. If everybody is discussing this AT, it shouldn't be as difficult for everybody to be on the same page about the purpose and the goal of the assistive technology. And another thing we really need to think about when we are using complex new assistive technology, there's a learning curve there. So we want to try to practice the device use with an activity that's less demanding and more familiar to the student. If it's an academic classroom setting, then if your student struggles with math, that may not be where you want to pull out this new device for note taking. You might want to start in their favorite subject that's the least challenging for them, just to kind of balance that cognitive load. I mean, all types of AT are the majority of complex AT, really all complex AT. It's another thing that your student is having to learn to use properly, to manage. It's just one more cognitive load that they're taking on in the school day, aside from their typical academics. So we really want to allow time for them to learn to use the AT, and we want to allow extra time for them to complete tasks when they're using this new assistive technology. And this picture is an SLP. She's working with her student, and it looks like he has a communication device there on his iPad. And so I just bring that out because this next point I feel like is so tied to this picture. We really want to model the use of assistive technology. And she seems to be doing that in this picture. She's using his device to communicate with him, and that's just such an important piece of that process with communication when we're looking at those kind of devices, communication devices. And there are so many students now that have AAC devices, and it's so common that you see those devices in one setting, but then you don't in another setting. And It's just, for them to really be effective and work, they need to be traveling with that student, and the people that work with the student need to be modeling the use of that technology, communicating with the student with their form of communication. And in his, it looks like a communication board that's probably got voice output and it's picture based. So she's using that with him, and that makes such an impact. We also want to really listen to the feedback provided by our students. Um, if they don't like the device, then we've got to consider that and try to figure out why. And, we may be able to solve that problem, or we have to look at a different solution for that. So we just really have to consider, their feedback and how they feel about the device. We also want to be sure and check in with the parents about how the AT is being used at home, because that's really important too. Parents need to buy into a lot of these devices, and that just helps the students be more successful with them. We want to monitor progress and use of AT, and then always share concerns and challenges with the team. I mean, again, we hear that a lot of times, my student has a device, but he just won't use it. He doesn't want to use it. And it's easy to say that and to kind of just, okay, leave it in the closet, but it's really our responsibility as their teachers to share those concerns and challenges with the team and try to come up with a different solution. Um, and we really should be collaborating with all the service providers, occupational therapists, physical therapists, speech language pathologists, vision teachers, deaf and hard of hearing teachers, and our orthopedically impaired teachers. They all have so much to share to this conversation, and they can really help like brainstorm solutions and try to come up with different options when it comes to AT. Their input is just so valuable in this conversation. So we need to make sure that they're included. Another big thing in classrooms, again, coming from the vision standpoint, my students had a lot of assistive technology. And a lot of that traveled with older students that were in high school. But for some of the younger students who stayed in the same classroom all day, they just really needed a space in that classroom to store their devices. Um, and that's so important for them to have that safe space, to know where it is, to be able to access those devices independently. It gives them ownership, and it builds their self-determination and just makes them responsible for their own learning. So that's huge. It's not always easy, but it's just something that we need to try to work toward. As we think about especially communication devices, but there's other types of AT too, we want to be sure that there's some type of backup plan in place. Devices break and it takes time to get those repaired. So how will little Johnny communicate um, while his iPad is being repaired that has his communication app on it? The same goes students with visual impairments. They're oftentimes really dependent on refreshable braille displays or some type of braille electronic device. But sometimes those things aren't working, so we may have to have paper braille available to them. So we just want to be sure that we have a backup plan for our students. And this is such a big one, such a big one. How many times have I walked into a classroom, oh, my device was dead, or little Johnny's device was not charged today. So we really just have to make sure that those devices are charged and available for our students. That's so important. And it seems like an easy thing to do, but sometimes, I mean, I know some of you are student teaching now, so you know how chaotic it can be at times. And then sometimes it's those little things like that that just slip through the cracks. But that's really important for our students with disabilities to have access to this assistive technology that they need to be successful in class. So those are just a few things that you can do to support the use of technology. But I really think one of the most important things to keep in the back of your mind is if it's not working, share that with the team. Let them know. Come together and try to figure out a different plan, try to change the plan. It's this AT is part of the IEP. That's a living document. It can change. So we just always have to be evaluating the effectiveness of the assistive technology that we're using. I've shared a few resources with you and I've linked those. I'll probably just send a copy of my PowerPoint and you'll be able to access those. So the Dear Colleague letter is the guidance. It's just an introduction to the guidance that OSEP just recently shared about myths and facts surrounding assistive technology devices. And it was really just last month. So this was really great timing for this. If assistive technology is your thing, you might want to read that because it's really interesting, and it really shows that OSEP they're putting their best foot forward to try to encourage proper use of assistive technology and to really make sure that every student who has an IEP that we are considering assistive technology as a solution, as a way to fill those gaps, as a way to provide support for those weaknesses. The consideration checklist is a huge list of possible assistive technology solutions for students, and it's kind of broken up in different settings. I also wanted to share this is a really cool thing if you can get your hands on one. It's just a little wheel of assistive technology for different areas like we have mobility, recreation, activities of daily living. And I looked for this today to try to share a link where you could get one of these, but I will look. I couldn't find one. I'll look again. These are all around schools. Um, but they might be out. It may have aged out. But this one's just a couple of years old, so you could probably still find one. And if I can find that website, I will add that to these resources. On the other side over here, websites, I've got Tools for Life listed here as one website that you can check out. The Center for Inclusive Design at Georgia Tech. That's the group that I think assists with the accessible materials. That's another really good website to look at. The Assistive Technology Industry site is a great resource. They have a huge nationwide conference yearly about assistive technology. This Vanderbilt site is something that I just came across while making this presentation. It's really interesting, and they work closely with OSEP on this new guidance around assistive technology, and they actually have like a module on AT. And then lastly, this is our DOE Georgia Project for Assistive Technology. There's some good resources there too, specific to Georgia. So that's another resource that you might want to check out. But that is a very brief introduction to assistive technology. I'm sure that there might be some questions. And another thing that I will mention is assistive technology changes all the time. It's just getting upgraded and improves, just like our iPhones get updated all the time. So it's just a great developing field. And if you're interested in that, then I suggest that you research it more. But I would be welcome to answer any questions that anyone might have.
We have someone who's raising their hand, so I'm going to allow them to talk.
Okay.
Hi, Nikki.
Hey, I didn't actually have any questions, but the chat box, it says chat disabled. So I don't know if anyone did have a question and it wasn't letting them type in it. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you for letting me know.
Thank-
You're welcome. And thank y'all.
She asked, what kinds of AT devices are available for EI children, like 0 to 3-year-olds? So like early intervention. I think a lot of times those kind of devices might be like very early communication type devices. Even like these calendar boxes that I showed you, it could be some type of tactile communication system that they're using, but also positioning devices like for mobility and just seating. There's a lot out there that we might not typically think of as AT, that 0 to 3-year-olds use. But there was a really, like, this new guidance from OSEP had a really big push on AT devices for that 0 to 3-year-old age group. So we may see some new things before long.
Then there's another question that says, given all the things that could be AT, are they typically all listed on the IEP or IFSP?
That's another good question. They should be. All AT should be listed on the IEP or the IFSP, and it really should be like spelled out. What is our purpose for this AT? What is our goal around this AT? What are we going to accomplish with this? And it's also that's a challenging question because a lot of that accessible technology is there for everybody, but for some of those students, it's more than just accessible technology, it's assistive technology. So in the past, I've always been really careful to spell that out in an IEP. For example, like every student in the classroom may have a Chromebook, but your student might move to a district, your student with an IEP who has to have that Chromebook might move to a district where every student doesn't have a Chromebook. So then, that accessible technology is not there. It turns into assistive technology. And if that's not noted in the IEP, then that student might move into a district and not have what they need. Or it may take the district a while to figure that out.
Someone
Um,
else asked if schools always have access to getting the appropriate equipment, and if not, how can teachers advocate for it?
Um, Really, schools should have access to getting the appropriate equipment. I mean, that's another piece that has come out with this new OSEP guidance. Just a reminder about the funding, the types of grants that are available for things like that. But there's money built in for these types of equipment. But again, like Tools for Life is a great resource because, I mean, I think it's a lot to expect in the district to go out and buy, a $15,000 communication device and not be sure if that works. So Tools for Life is great. That loan program can help with those kind of things. And a lot of distributors will, they come out and they'll work through teams with devices and maybe provide like a little mini trial for those devices too. But I think like your avenue to advocate is your IEP team. I mean, and your IEP, that's a legal document. So when you note that a student needs something in the IEP, then the school system is pretty much they are obligated to provide assistive technology for your student.
This next question kind of goes along with the one that you just answered, but it says, how do you go about getting specific devices? Since it costs money, if I determine a child needs a magnifier, who typically is required to find the device and come up with the money? Is it mine as the special educator?
That's a good question. Typically, like students that have visual impairments, they have federal quota funds available to them that your teacher for students with visual impairments knows all about. And she can set these students up, and certain things that they need are provided through these quota funds. And then also, students with visual impairments are required to have low vision evaluations where these magnifiers are prescribed for them. Like one magnifier, there's different strengths of magnifiers. So it's really important to have somebody, a professional, a low vision person evaluate our students to see what kind of magnifier they need. And again, like the DOE provides low vision evaluations free of cost for students with visual impairments. So check with your district, get in contact with your teacher for students with visual impairments. Even if that student does not have an eligibility for visual impairment right now, but you think that the student needs a magnifier, it would still be worthwhile to talk to your TVI that's in your district about that, and they can help with that.
Someone asked if there are specific trainings or workshops teachers can learn more about new technologies, or how does one keep up to date on the newest technologies?
There are Tools for Life. I keep on going back to Tools for Life. They offer some classes, so check out their website. If I think the assistive technology industry website also probably has some classes around AT, webinars, and things like that. And I'm thinking, like, if you got specific into the area of assistive technology that you were looking at, like vision, for example, American Praying House for the Blind, they provide a lot of trainings around assistive technology that addresses students' needs with visual impairments. And then like Gallaudet University provides some trainings around assistive technology for students with hearing impairments. So once you if there's an area that you're interested in, there's more resources that are specific. But Tools for Life is great if you're just thinking about students, with learning disabilities and things that might help them.
The next question is, can you comment on the role of RESA in helping with determining devices if the school does not have the local capacity?
Okay, that's a tricky question. I think that could be different in different RESA areas, because they kind of operate differently in the different regions. So I don't really know how to answer that question, just to be honest with you. And I don't want to say anything about the way one RESA might do something because they're not all the same.
The next question is, if you're a classroom teacher, can you reach out to Tools for Life to discuss AT options and loaners, or would you go through your administration to contact them?
I would contact, you could easily go to Tools for Life and just explore the website, but before I actually contacted Tools for Life, I would reach out to my administrator. Each district typically has like a liaison, somebody who has an account with Tools for Life for that district. And they're kind of like the contact point person for Tools for Life. So I would definitely reach out to administration before like contacting Tools for Life about a loaner.
All right, I think that's it. So thank you so much for joining us today, Heather. We really appreciate you being here. Next month's workshop will take place on March 21st with our guest speaker, Michael Kupitu, who is a teacher recruitment and retention specialist at the 2023 Georgia Teacher of the Year. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at MFECOE and read the weekly MFECOE Connection newsletter for updates on all of our future events. You can also text at MFECOE to the number 81010 for text updates. Have a great rest of your day, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.